Save the Semantics, episode 338. It is September 8th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday evening. Little catch up today. Some weekend activities, mostly gaming related. And then also just kind of maybe talking a little bit about the week ahead, maybe some expectations, right? There might be a potential direct coming up later this week as well, so that might be worth talking about whenever they do announce that. It feels inevitable in a way, right? After all of the rumors that are circling that. But yeah, just wanted to kind of talk about some other things as well. I cannot believe that it's September. Like, it's kind of recently only just dawned on me that we're like already a week into September. Like, it just is kind of crazy, you know. I often wish for the passage of time in certain instances, you know what I mean? When like times are hard or whatever, or when I'm having like a difficult week or something, but then you realize that there's pros and cons to that, you know what I mean? So I just think it's an interesting dichotomy. But yeah, we're in September now. Getting into the fall kind of feels like, although we've had some warmer days over the past week or so, some warm day, a bit of a warmer day today, but definitely more of a faller vibe kind of coming in, which is nice because I am a fan of that. And then with fall weather, we got fall sports. The NFL just started its season this past weekend, I believe. I think the first game took place in, I think it was Sao Paulo in Brazil, which is very interesting to me. Like, I am not familiar at all about the history of like American football in Brazil. Like, I'm just like, is that like a thing? Is that becoming more popular? Like, I know that all of the major sports have tried various ways to try and like, you know, get more of an international audience for their respective leagues and that kind of thing. But yeah, American football in Brazil is interesting. I am curious, like, what kind of the, you know, how the appeal sort of started and everything like that. I was talking to a friend, and he mentioned that in Brazil in particular, and this is not something that I'm super familiar with, even though I had gone there last year, was the fact that there is kind of this sense of Brazilians having kind of this interest in the just American culture, quote unquote, whatever that is. American just aspects of things, just the concept of like Americanism, right? You know, the fact that so much of pop culture and film and media and all those kinds of things are so closely tied to kind of this American image, I think maybe is what perpetuate, I cannot talk. I cannot talk. I'm just going to use a different word. It sort of seeps into other cultures, like it kind of like dilutes itself into other types of cultures. That was a nightmare. But I think there's maybe this sort of like image that other nations, other nationalities can have of American culture, where it's like, you know, they have this image where it's very far from, you know, it's just sort of like the idea that has been kind of presented to them, sold and commodified in a lot of ways. And maybe they want to participate in that in some way, shape, or form. So maybe that's kind of the appeal there. But yeah, I think football in general is very interesting because it is so, I mean, if you compare it to football, soccer, like, it is a very different sport entirely, right? Like, it's just a completely different sport. So I don't know. I'm curious to see like what the appeal is there, like outside of it being an American pastime. Like, is there other aspects of the sport that maybe appeal to them? I have no idea. I have no idea. But maybe that is something worth looking into. So yeah, football started. I'm not the biggest football guy, obviously. I'm predominantly into basketball. But I have found it, like, especially during the NFL playoffs, like, that was pretty exciting. There were some pretty fun games during the NFL playoffs. Like, week to week, it's hard to really pay attention. Like, I'll sometimes, like, this yesterday, I was just kind of doing a little bit of score watching, and none of the games really looked all that interesting. The only one that was interesting was the late night game against, it was the Ravens and the Bills, which turned out to be quite a pretty exciting game where I think Buffalo came back to win. But outside of that, none of the games looked very, there were not really like any tight, close games necessarily. So I don't know. It just was nothing really caught my eye. And I think that's kind of the case a lot of the time for me and I know it's really hard for me to be able to gauge and to get a sense of what the game is actually like just looking at the scores themselves. But listen, I'm not going to be paying attention to all 32 teams or whatever. It's not my sport necessarily, right? If there's anything interesting going on, like for last year, I think it was the Lions and like the Vikings were both like divisional rivals, and then they had that one huge game before the end of the regular season. Like, that was pretty interesting. Like, that was sort of like a marquee game. But outside of that, I don't know. It's not like I'm cool listening to like other people talk about it. Like, I'll listen, once in a while to some different sports podcasts talking football and that kind of thing. But like, outside of that, it's just like the technicalities. I complain about the fact that there's too many rules in basketball. Like, there are way too many rules in football. Like, there's just, I get it. I understand there has to be different degrees in which certain calls are officiated and whatnot, but there's too many rules. There is just like, there's so much stoppages. I complain about the stoppages like in basketball. I think the review system in basketball is terrible. It's awful. I get it. Like, it's important to get a call right, but they already get so many calls wrong. So it's like, whatever. I don't want to talk about officiating, but that's just kind of where my head's at. Football, there's way more stoppages. There's the action that does happen can be exciting, but most of the time it's not. Like, I would say like 80% of football is pretty slow. So that's just not very appealing to me. But yeah, that's just kind of where my head's at. But listen, it's cool. It's cool to have like another sort of sport to check out when that is kind of like available, you know what I mean? So there's like, there's like Monday Night Football going on and that kind of thing. So I might check that out if I'm interested. But yeah, it's kind of giving, football starts first, and then the NBA kind of comes back next month. So that's going to be exciting as well. Obviously I'll get into more of that as we get closer to the season. But it's kind of, I think, just fall sort of signifies to me, at least more recently, kind of like sports are kind of back. So that's like a good feeling, I think. I looked a little bit more into, and I watched sort of the big breakdown from Pablo Torre about the Kawhi Leonard / Steve Ballmer / Clippers scandal. I mean, I think at this point it's pretty well documented. I think right now the NBA is just looking to kind of investigate things at the moment. So that's kind of like up in the air. I don't know what the ramifications of that are going to be, but if it's like a substantial amount of evidence that pinpoints and shows that there is like, there is like this clear issue going on where like Steve Ballmer like circumvented the cap in order to pay Kawhi Leonard extra in a a different kind of way, I think is I don't know. It's an interesting case. It's not like the most insane thing ever, but I think there are going to be some issues in how the NBA and how other teams are going to react to it, right? I think that like I don't know what first of all, I'm looking at this from a very like I don't know. It's not something I felt very strongly about necessarily. Like I did not feel like significantly super I don't know. I didn't. I was when I heard about the news. It's like, all right, I guess this is a bit of a sporting scandal. I think what I'm more interested in is seeing how the rest of the league and other teams are going to kind of react to this, right? If the NBA and Adam Silver kind of maybe lay out a lot more stronger stipulations on the rules of this cap and maintaining the fact that you cannot pay a player more than what their salary kind of is already expected them to be, then I think that it will sort of continue to severely limit things, which I think might not necessarily be like a great thing, because it sort of kind of burdens teams in certain ways and doesn't allow them to work around these kinds of things. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm just kind of talking a little bit. I'm talking out of my ass. I don't really know what it's gonna look like, but yeah, I mean, it's not like great, obviously. I just don't feel particularly strong about it. I think it's an interesting case for sure. Like there is no like real, I don't know, like there is no like tangible issue that really like initial kind of problem that comes about because one, the Clippers are already kind of in this position. Like they'll be like a good team. Like I don't know if there's going to be like any immediate effects that are going to take place, right? I don't know if there's going to be something that the NBA sort of strikes down like at the beginning of the season. Like that's not going to happen, right? So the team is already kind of set. I think it's just more going to be like, what is going to be the effect of this further down the road? So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to keep an eye out on, but outside of that, I don't know what else to really add to it. But yeah, it's kind of it's sort of like one of those things where, the effects of, where you have like a situation where a team is really looking to kind of like capitalize on a certain situation and kind of just overdoes it. I don't know if there's like another example of this happening in recent history, but I have seen other people talk about how this is something that happens like in other leagues outside of the US, in like the Premier League and other like football leagues. Like this is something that has happened in the past, and it's like if you want to kind of get your hands on a premier player, like there are certain ways that you can try to incentivize them outside of the amount of money that they're already getting, what is already being expected of them to be paid, as part of their salary, but also like some other additional things as well, right? So that's kind of where like the gray area lies. But I do, yeah, I think, I think I definitely understand like the rules being in place. Like I understand that we are kind of in this parity era because of the CBA rules that have been sort of enforced, and a big reason for that is the fact that you cannot like just overpay all of your players. You cannot pay the highest bidder. You cannot be like the highest bidder for all of, whatever free agents are kind of available. I mean, free agency is just like not a thing anymore, right? So like that kind of has killed that notion. But I think, yeah, I think that it's just sort of like a this might kind of just set like a further precedent for what it's going to look like in the future. Anyways, that's all I got to say. Like, I don't have that much more, until more information kind of pops up. So I beat The Witcher 3. I beat the main story of The Witcher 3 last night. And I have some thoughts. I want to talk about that. I intend on going through the 2 additional DLC content pieces later. I don't know when I'll get to that. Maybe not this week, but maybe the weekend. I'll probably play a little bit of that. But yeah, I beat the main game. I was really kind of trying to, at least towards like the end of the main sort of story, I was trying to push a little bit to get to the ending, because I think, so what happened is there was a point in the story where I thought this was going to be like the climax of the game, and I was like, okay, I guess not. There's going to be a lot more content going on. I thought like, okay, so if I push through this last portion, maybe I'll get to the end. And then there's like more stuff that popped up, which I like for the sake of gameplay and the sake of the fun of it. I can't really complain too much, because all of the things that came after that certain, that sort of major plot point, it was good. Like, it was good stuff. I do think the one sort of issue that I have with how the story was presented is the pacing of it. I do think, I do feel there was this kind of sense of a little bit of, kind of the ending of Lord of the Rings extended edition, maybe not in that exact format, but more so where this sort of like ending just kind of never came. Like, it just sort of kept going and going. It's like, okay, what's next? All right, here's one more thing. All right, here's one more thing. So that kind of happened. I would say like a few times where there was like a bit of a misdirection. Oh, you thought you beat the big bad. There's actually one more thing, right? Like, they had like a couple of moments like that. And, again, all of the things that kind of led to it were really fun, but I do feel that it sort of maybe overstayed its welcome a little bit. And I didn't really, it was just kind of like, okay, I felt that it was a bit too drawn out. But I do like, so I did a little, I looked into this a little bit. There are technically 3 endings that you can get, 3 sort of main story endings that you can get. And I got the one where I feel is like the most interesting, because I saw the one, there's like a bad ending, quote unquote bad ending, and then there's like the other ending, which I think is like sort of like the more common one if you follow through on a lot of the threads in the story. I got the one which I felt was pretty bittersweet, I think. But it kind of fit well with the character, not Geralt's character, but of Ciri's character and her sort of like decision. I don't want to give too much away for anybody who hasn't played the game, but like for her sort of character and what she decides, like it kind of fit in with that. And honestly, it made for like the most like emotional moment of the game. That was like the sort of ending. There was never like a moment in this game where I was really struck by any particular emotion. I was more impressed with some of the writing, and some of the dialogue that was being presented, but there was not like a particular moment where I was like, whoa, I was like really struck by something. But I think the ending was probably the most like emotional moment of the game for me, which I think fit well. And I think it worked really well, because like you're sort of building up towards this point where these sort of like 2 characters are you know, you spent such a long time like kind of looking for this character, and when you finally find that person and you sort of like try to kind of build up something, you find out that they have their own kind of goals and stuff. And throughout the last, I would say the last like act of the game, maybe that you would maybe consider it like the third act of the game, you are sort of constantly reminded that this person, Ciri, is their kind of their own individual person, and they're going to sort of try to mold their future into something that, you know, they believe is the right decision. And I think it really works well in the context of kind of the ending that I got. And it was, I thought it was really well done. And I was also curious a little bit. I'm less sort of worried or less concerned about this, but I was a little curious about what the connection was going to be for this game and The Witcher, the Witcher 4, right? Because like, okay, so there's clearly going to be, you know, one of the endings might have to tie with this one. So is there like a canonical ending to The Witcher 3? For now, it seems to be kind of considered like open-ended. But I don't know. It's I'm less worried about that. I'm less worried about the, you know, the lore. Although I do think like the world building and the lore and everything like that is interesting. But also The Witcher 3 and the way and how this game is structured. A lot of the way in which the story is kind of woven through is based on your decisions, right? So you have kind of your own, you know, you have sort of your own experience, like while not necessarily unique, it is kind of your own story that you built based on the decisions that you make, So, I don't know how well that kind of ties into the next game necessarily, but, it's not as important to me for there to be this kind of like, for there to be this kind of like, I don't know, it's like a story kind of like cohesion or whatever, right? Because the way I've sort of viewed The Witcher based on kind of the material that I've engaged with, like I've seen maybe like 3-4 episodes of the show on Netflix, and obviously I've played through the main story of The Witcher 3. It feels like the way this sort of franchise is set up is like more of this kind of like, you know, sort of like the chronicles of Geralt in a lot of ways. And I know that's going to change with The Witcher 4, where Ciri is going to be the main character, it seems like. But it seems like, you know, it's like tales of Geralt going on a lot of these like different adventures. And although in The Witcher 3 they do reference events that happened in past games, I don't think it's really as important for there to be this like huge kind of like, I don't know, like it's more important that whatever connections that there might exist kind of service the story as opposed to the story servicing the, you know, the history of the game necessarily. You know what I mean? It's more like the things that they talk about, you know, where they talk about like, oh, you know, so and so, like, do you remember when we, you know, conquered that thing? It's like, that's not that important. It's more so important that they have been friends or whatever, or enemies in the past, and their relationship has maybe changed over the course of their lives, and they're currently at this point now where they either maybe trust each other or they distrust each other based on like these past events. And in this current version of the characters, they sort of, you know, manage these different situations, just based on their, you know, their different personality traits and those kinds of things, right? I just don't place as much importance on the lore kind of side of things. Like, while it is interesting, like it is not the most important part of my, you know, of my sort of like engagement with a game's story. Like I'm much more interested in the just the actual story it tells, like the characters and what they go through, and how they deal with their different struggles, and how they kind of come out of it, and how they evolve and change throughout the story. Like that's like the most important part for me, less so than like the historical accuracies of like the series, the series like history and past or whatever, right? It is interesting, definitely, but it is just not the most important thing to me. So however they decide to transition into The Witcher 4, I'm all for, right? Like they'll find a way to kind of make that story. I have faith that I think that they'll make the story interesting. If like if the series kind of main writer is going to be a part of that, like I think that they'll find a way to make it work. I mean, so far I think last year we've only seen the sort of teaser trailer for The Witcher 4, so outside of that we don't really have that much information. Like who knows, that like that game is probably still years away from being released. So I'm patient. I mean, I literally just played this game, and I still have more to play as well. So I have time, and I have many other games to play through as well. So, but this was a really great introduction to the series. Again, there's still a lot more to play through. I'm excited to get into the DLC because I've heard especially good things about the second DLC, which is Blood and Wine. I heard that one is really good. And I've heard some people even say that the story in that is even more interesting than in the main story. So I'm excited to kind of get into that. And honestly, I'm okay with continuing to sort of play this game, because I just, I've thoroughly enjoyed kind of the world. I've enjoyed the combat. Again, is not like my favorite thing, but I've learned to be, decent at it. I play at like the normal difficulty mode, so it's really not that difficult. And that's fine. That's not why I'm playing the game, but just sort of the immersion in the game is, I think, what really works for me. Like after I beat the main story, you kind of get brought back into this one area, and you just kind of like I was just kind of like sitting there listening to the music. You could see kind of like the mist and the mountains in the background, and the music is really nice. The flute playing, like you just kind of sit there and just sort of like take it in, like that. Those are like the moments that you also appreciate on top of the narrative aspects of as well, right? Like just taking in the scenery and the moment, and kind of reflecting on the journey that you've been, and kind of like, yeah, continuing to kind of move forward in Geralt's story, and seeing kind of what's next for him, right? I think is going to be something to look forward to. But yeah, good stuff. That's going to do it for now. Just kind of wanted to catch up a little bit more on Witcher 3 now that I've beat the main story. I'll talk, once I get into the DLC portion of it, I'll talk about that as well, if there's anything that's worth discussing. And yeah, I'll sort of update as it goes on any additional news that comes up, on any direct rumors and stuff like that. I'm sure, I think we'll probably get like an official confirmation later this week, right? I think Friday it feels like it's going to be the most likely date for them to release a direct. So I might do like a predictions thing on, I don't know, Thursday or whatever. I'll see what the schedule looks like. But yeah, that's going to do it for now, and I'll catch it back up later this week. All right, recording this on Wednesday, September 10th. It is recording this during the evening. I wanted to talk about my thoughts and my predictions on the upcoming Nintendo Direct that's coming up on Friday. I was originally thinking of recording this yesterday, actually, just to kind of get ahead on things. But I was like, what if I do that and then I look a little foolish? So I decided to wait, and then they promptly announced it this morning. So pretty exciting stuff. I'm actually looking quite forward to this. I feel this will be kind of like the biggest potential update for Switch 2 and just kind of, anything kind of involving that since the release of the console. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what updates they give, any announcement dates or release dates for the games that they've already announced, especially games like Metroid Prime 4, although that's not like, high on my list of games necessarily that I'm interested in playing at this time, but probably down the line. But it is exciting to just see like a, big announcement like that too. And maybe some other things. Games that I particularly want, even though I have a slew of games that I still need to work my way through. But let's get like the obvious kind of ones out of the way, and then I'll kind of delve into some of my wants and desires, most of them, which will probably not get realized, but it's still fun to speculate and anticipate and that kind of thing. So this presentation is going to be an hour long this time, so that's pretty beefy. I think there's already been some discussions about a potential 40th anniversary kind of, celebration or acknowledgement for Super Mario Brothers. So I'm assuming that there's going to be something related to that in this, which I think includes the upcoming Mario, the second Mario Brothers movie, which I'm not like, I don't really care that much, right? I haven't seen the first one. I don't know if I will anytime soon. Maybe I'll just watch it on a whim or something, but I don't really have a ton of interest in watching the movie itself. But I think the second movie has sort of been in development for a decent amount of time, and it's expected to come out, I think, next year, which is feels pretty quick. So I'm assuming that they'll talk about that for a decent chunk of time in this direct as well. So that will kind of coincide with the anniversary and everything like that. So I do believe that's going to take up a decent chunk of time, which is why I think this direct is a little longer than usual. I also expect, as I was saying, a release date for Metroid Prime 4. It's been a while since I've really talked about the game. They really haven't provided like a ton of updates for it, which I think is a little, I think it's like, because they noted, I think, in the original trailer that the game was going to come out in 2025. So unless they like delayed it or something like that, like I feel like it's still going to come out later this year, probably later, maybe in kind of close to the end of the year or something like that. So that's kind of that feels like a pretty safe prediction. I also anticipate some additional like ports that are going to be announced. I think they'll probably announce something like Metaphor and Baldur's Gate, which I think would be cool. Like I would be interested in playing Baldur's Gate 3. But yeah, some of those other, kind of games from a couple of years back now, I do believe that there's going to be a chance for the game to be released. Some other release dates for games like Elden Ring, Final Fantasy VII Remake, those feel pretty safe as well. And I think I do think that there's going to be kind of just like an assortment of other ports as well. Maybe some more like Metal Gear ports. There's been a lot of chatter about Resident Evil ports, which is, it's cool. I've never been particularly interested in the series, but it's cool that it's coming to Switch. It would be cool if it comes to Switch 2, right? Just so that there's like more support for that. But yeah, I think those are kind of like the big sort of obvious ones that I think has been, pretty heavily speculated over the last couple of weeks or so, and rumored about. And it's not something that, again, a lot of these, like Final Fantasy VII, maybe a little bit of metaphor, although I kind of talked about my sort of, a little while back, I talked about some of my, I don't know, maybe my reservations about, Persona and kind of that game and the series, and how maybe like I'm a little hesitant to maybe get into it, but it's still cool that if it is going to come to Switch 2, at least I can play it in sometime in the future. But I think, yeah, so those are kind of like the obvious ones. Here are some that I feel are maybe a bit of a long shot. Potential, I don't know. Like, is it too early to announce Zelda? It might be a little too early to announce, like, a new Zelda. Like, that would be, like, a big... Now we're kind of going into, like, my wants, so I guess we'll just transition into that. Because I think this is going to be a pretty big showcase, so I'm sure they're going to announce, like, a ton of games, most of which I'm not going to be particularly interested in, but I think it'll be worth to... there might be something that kind of pops up, but let's talk about the games that I do want to see, because there are a handful, and I don't know. I it's just fun to speculate, but I have no actual. I don't know. I have no actual like footing if there's going to be any announcements, but these are my wants. As I mentioned, Zelda. I think, it's been since they released Echoes of Wisdom. It's been a couple of years now, right? 2023, I think, was when the game came out, and it's been Tears of the Kingdom came out in 2022. I think. So it's been 3 years, which is crazy. Has it been 3 years or 2 years? I don't know. But it's been a minute since Tears of the Kingdom came out, which feels wrong to say, right? Like it was just such a, I don't know, like there was such this anticipation for it, and then it kind of sort of came and went. Obviously, the initial release was a lot of hype and stuff, and people are still talking about the game and talking about, the comparisons between it and Breath of the Wild and all that. But we're just kind of beyond that now. Like it's kind of crazy to even think about that it's been a decent chunk of time since that game has come out. So I still think that we're quite a bit of ways from the new 3D Zelda coming out, but it's entirely possible. It would be pretty crazy if they hinted at something like that. I mean, that would be a huge announcement, right? Like, I am curious, like, what the big kind of ending announcement's going to be. I think, a lot of people are saying, like, a new 3D Mario, but they also just released a Donkey Kong, so it's like, I don't know if that's going to, like, was the same team that was developing Donkey Kong also developing a 3D Mario? Like, I don't know. I have no idea, but it feels like, two kind of 3D platformers back-to-back years might feel a little bit, it feels like a lot. So I don't know. It would be cool to see, absolutely, but I don't really expect that. And this is the kind of the same thing with Zelda as well. It's a want, of course. Like, I would love to see a new Zelda game, but I just don't know. I don't really think that's gonna happen. Another franchise that I feel it's been a little while since we've really seen anything come out. Have anything come out is Fire Emblem. It's been, I think 22 was when Engage came out. I remember because it was like around the same year or around the same time as Xenoblade 3. But it's been a minute. It's been a minute since Engage has come out. And there really hasn't been anything too much that has really come out for Fire Emblem. I know there's been NSO releases, like the original Fire Emblem and some of the older games, but outside of that, there hasn't been like a brand new game or the kind of the heavily rumored remake for Genealogy of the Holy War. But that feels, I don't know. I would like to see a Fire Emblem release. Like, that would be really exciting for like next year, either a new game or a remake. I don't really care too much. Like, I'll take either. I think I would like for it to be sort of in the vein of something maybe a little bit more serious and a little bit more, I don't know, not too, just like Engage. I know has, it's kind of like, I've heard the gameplay is fun, but I need a little bit more than that. I need more with just the characters, a little bit of story. I don't need anything super complex, but if it can kind of hit on those notes a little bit and not lean too much into kind of the, the silliness and the just the fan servicey aspect of Engage, and return back to kind of a bit more of the serious tone that it kind of accompanied with Three Houses, I would be a fan of that. So yeah, I still haven't played Engage. I don't know if I will play Engage. Like it's just not, I don't know. I feel that if I'm going in with the caveat that I'm just going to ignore the story, it just doesn't feel like it's worth it. You know what I mean? Like I would like to engage with the story in a meaningful way, even if it isn't like the most exciting. Like I don't want to like skip through content just to get to battles. Like that's never been my thing. I've never done that with any game, and I don't really intend on doing that. So I don't want to do that with a game if I'm just gonna like play through like half of the content. You know what I mean? Anyways, yeah. Hopefully, there's gonna be maybe a new Fire Emblem announcement. Let's just get this one out of the way. Any type of Xenoblade update would be great. I don't even really need like a new game release. Just release announcement. I just need like, I just want to know if there's going to be updates made for the games that already exist. Like that was kind of like a big factor for why I wanted to get the Switch 2, is to get a graphical update, because I will be revisiting those games like, yeah, sometime in the future, you know what I mean? Even if I don't do like full playthroughs, like I would like to go back and play them. I still haven't beat X yet. Like I've been kind of waiting to see if there's going to be a Switch 2 update for that. Still kind of holding off. I would be a little disappointed if they don't even give any updates at all. Like I think that would be like a huge, like just like a huge missed opportunity to like showcase the system's prowess and everything. And considering that other Nintendo IPs have gotten some updates, like not like free updates, like if they can give even just like a little paid like update for the Xenoblade games, like I'm gonna get them. Like that's just like I'm gonna get them, right? Like I will be happy to get those, because I've been kind of anticipating that for quite some time. So honestly, any kind of Xenoblade update I would be happy with. I think it's just like just a little graphical update I think would be huge. Switch 2 editions, I don't know what that would look like, but just any type of like fidelity, graphical capability update I think would be huge. Another game that I think would be cool to see is Nier. I feel like they had the Nier Automata port for the Switch 2 pretty late into the Switch's kind of life cycle, if you want to call it that. If they can get a port of Nier Replicant, I would be getting that like pretty quickly. I loved playing Automata. Like it's become one of my favorite games. Like I don't know if it's like up there for me, but it is definitely, just in terms of like the narrative, the story, the music, all that kind of stuff. Like it kind of like hits all of the boxes of what I like in a game. And I've heard great things about Replicant. And I've been meaning to play that, but it's only on, I think it's on PS4 was the original release. So if they can port that, that would be huge, because like at this time I don't really have a way of playing it unless I get like a PS5, PS4. I don't know if I don't think it's available on Steam. I would need to double check that, but I would much rather play this on console if I could. So, yeah, Replicant would be awesome. That would be huge, to see something like that. What else? I think that's kind of like the big asks. Like, honestly, I think there are already games that have been ported over, including like Yakuza, especially Yakuza, and I guess you could put in what else, like, like Cyberpunk, even though that's like not like a huge ask of me, like that is like a pretty big accomplishment. Like those are kind of the things, and considering now that I've played through The Witcher 3, and I'm like, okay, I like what CD Projekt Red kind of does with their games, and if Cyberpunk is any, if it has this similar kind of structure, but in this kind of more futuristic setting, I would be happy to kind of get into that. But I think those are kind of the ones, those are kind of my predictions, some obvious ones, and then some sort of wants that that would be kind of cool to see. I think the next, I'm still kind of like, I've been sort of talking about this for a minute now, but I am kind of contemplating the next thing that I want to play, right? Because I'm really wanting to dive into the DLC for The Witcher 3, and I'm anticipating that's going to take quite a bit of time. And just kind of looking a little bit into it, Blood and Wine is a pretty expansive DLC, so that's going to take like a good chunk of time as well. So, and I have no intention of rushing through it. So I was thinking about, oh, maybe I'll just Silk Song, or maybe I'll do, Bonanza as the kind of the next game, which I still think could be an option. But I think I'm going to just take my time with The Witcher 3 for the remainder of whatever content and, whatever stories are available, because I've been enjoying it. I've heard great things about the other additional content. So I'm excited to kind of delve into that. Probably this like weekend or something. And just sort of, just kind of work my way through that. I also, I talked about this when I played through the Trails in the Sky demo, but that has kind of jumped up my list of games that I would like to get. So if, when the game becomes available, I think in a week or something like that, that is something that I am kind of expecting that I'll pick up. I think what I'll do is I'll get the Switch 1 version, because I do want to have it on cartridge, and then get the Switch 2 like upgrade pack for it. I think that would be sort of like the best, it would just be nice to have like a cartridge game, because I still haven't bought like a cartridge for a game since like Echoes of Wisdom, and that's been a while, so like it would be nice to hold, physical media in my hand. So I think that would be probably the next thing that I pick up, because I really enjoyed the demo. I thought it was super fun. I thought the combat was awesome. I think the story is gonna, I've heard great things about the story, and they're leaving some breadcrumbs and leaving some sort of hints here and there about where this, where the kind of the world sort of expands to, and where the story leads. So I'm anticipating that I'll pick that one up pretty shortly, even after kind of release. So that's kind of my game plan of sorts. But who knows? Whatever, I don't think they're going to announce any new releases that are going to come out later this year. Like in terms of, they've already announced games like, Kirby Air Riders and Metroid Prime 4 and that kind of thing. But in terms of games that are going to be like surprised releases, like I don't know, maybe definitely some stuff on NSO, that feels like also a safe bet. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be a ton that gets released for 2025, right? So I think it's gonna be definitely be something. I'll try. I haven't done this in a while, because I like to, I enjoy my sleep, and I value my sleep. But I might try to get up a little earlier on Friday to watch that. I think that might be fun. Yeah, tomorrow's going to be, a bit of a long day to kind of wait for that, but it is, I think it'll be worth it. I think it'll be fun to watch. Hopefully people just don't have like super high expectations, because they'll be let down. But I do think this is going to be a big one. I do think this is going to be a big direct. I think there's going to be some big stuff shown off. I think there's going to be some stuff that I latch onto. And I'm hoping maybe one of my kind of wishes come true, because I think it would be cool to have that, whatever updates to my catalog, updates to, old software with like Xenoblade and stuff, I think would be great to see. But whatever happens, I think it'll be fun, because I do think like the last two kind of presentations were a bit, not exactly the most interesting, with like the indie showcase and then the partner showcase as well. Like those are it felt pretty lackluster for the most part. So I think this one will be delivering much more, and more content. Absolutely. So that's something to look forward to. Yeah, other than that, I wanted to talk more like Witcher 3 and talk more about kind of the themes and that kind of stuff, but I'll save that conversation as I sort of make my way through, the other parts of the DLC, and kind of, maybe hash out my thoughts a little bit more. Because there are things that I want to talk about. I mostly feel like I've been kind of giving my impressions of the game, and giving my sort of like my feelings on the game as well, as opposed to talking more in depth about the story, the narrative, the themes, and those kinds of things. And I want to get into that, because there are a lot of things that are being explored in this game, that I think would be worth discussing, in regards to like, identity, just war, a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in here. So I think I'll save that for another time. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for today and this episode. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.